Hey, it's Brand, and today we're doing some fan art of BillyDaDinosaur's fan art of DeadSlug's Alyssa. That's fan art of a fan art. Alyssa is a portal master character who can use her portals to make things bigger or smaller. So if she takes her fist and shoves it through the portal, out of the other side of the portal can be a huge fist that completely kills whoever she's punching. Or if she puts the portal under a monster and the monster falls through, we can make that monster teeny tiny so she can squish it with her normal sized foot. But anyways, that's what we're modeling today in Blender, so let's get to it. For my anatomy reference, I'll be using this page from the Master Guide to Drawing Anime, How to Draw Original Characters from Simple Templates, Volume 1. You can get this book on paperback for $11.93, or you can just do a Google search and find this particular image in Google image searches. We're using this for the anatomy reference, and then for the rest of the character reference, we'll be using Billy's fan art image. So let's bring our references into Blender, and we will size them down to match up to the size of the armature. That way we've got the correct scale. Once we have everything set up, we can start blocking out our character with some subdivided cubes. Bring one in for the head, bring another in for the muzzle, shape it about where you want it, remesh it, and then just kind of sculpt it into place. Add another subdivided cube for the torso, sculpt it into place, and so on and so on. We'll keep this up until we get the entire body blocked out using pretty well just subdivided cubes, and then whenever we want to sculpt it, we'll apply the subdivision and bring it into sculpt mode and move it around a little bit. For things like the legs, you can just drop in the cube, and just extruding should be enough to get it close enough to where we need it. Anything that isn't close enough, we can fix that later on when we remesh everything in sculpt mode. Cylinders for the arms, since arms are pretty well just cylinders. Add a loop cut here to kind of bump out that muscle in the arm. For the neck, it's a cylinder. We squeeze the middle part and we widen the top part and try to connect it to the head as close as we can. And that kind of gives a good connection between the neck and the head, filling out the back part. The hand is a sphere, pulling and tugging on these vertices quite a bit. Apply the modifier and sculpt it more into the palm shape. Fingers and thumb, stretched out cubes, extrude them, add loop cuts, squeeze and pull. Make the index finger the same way as the thumb. And for the rest of the fingers, just copy and paste them. Move them into place to match the reference. Now that we have it blocked out, let's swing the arms up into a T-pose. T-posing makes it a little bit easier to work on since the arm is farther away from the body, and the body won't quite get in the way when you're trying to work on certain parts of the arms. And the arms won't get in the way when you're trying to work on certain parts of the body. When you have your body blocked out the way that you need it, you can bring it into sculpt mode and remesh all of the body minus the hands and the head. Now we smooth all the transitions, define the knees, put in a butt crack, use inflate to kind of pump the butt cheeks up, add the crease at the crotch, armpits. Instead of making boobs, I created a crease on her chest to just define the plane change. Join the head pieces together and define the jawline, then remesh so the head and the muzzle combine together. Smooth out the transition. Using a mask, I mask out the exact shape of the eye sockets and then push them in to kind of make her look like Spider-Man. Bring in a sphere and squish it down and rotate it just a bit to conform to the shape of the head, and those will be her eyes. Now she looks like a gray alien. We'll drop in some pupils to make her look a little less creepy. Remesh and smooth things up. Using Draw Sharp, kind of pull out the eyelids from the eye sockets and try to define the shape just a little bit more. Using the scrape tool, we'll flatten the sides of her head out just a little. Using Draw Sharp, we'll pull out the cheekbones, smooth a little bit, carve around the nose, try to define the nose a little bit more. We'll start working on the lips by plumping them out and creasing for the mouth. Plump up the cheeks a little bit. A lot of just moving around, tweaking, until you get the shape the way you want it. For the brow ridge, I left it kind of sharp because I wanted a really noticeable plane change. Then using the crease, you can push in where the eyelids are. Using a plane with snapping, we can shape and make the eyebrows, solidify, subdivide to make them stick out a little bit. For the ear, we'll squish a subdivided cube down, inset, and push the inside of the ear. We'll get it into place, rotate it, remesh it in sculpt mode, and start adding in these ear shapes. I don't know what they're called, they're just parts of the ears. Use the scrape tool and the pinch tool to make sharp edges. That way we can see very obvious plane changes. Size it up where you need it. Starting on the hair, we'll use a subdivided cube. and make it a little bit larger than the head. We'll carve away a little bit of the front of it. That way there's not so much geometry to have to push behind the face. And using elastic deform, we'll push and pull the hair around to make it not look so much like a bowl cut and more like her bangs. Remesh if you need more geometry to move things around, and mold it around her ear so it's not clipping it. For the side bangs, we take a subdiv cube and get the shape about where we need it, rotate it into place, move the vertices around, stretch it out, pull it in, get it about where you want it, and then we'll apply the modifier, remesh it, and using the scrape tool, we'll flatten out the inside of her hair in order to lose some of the volume. Mirror it so we don't have to do it twice. Add another cube subdivided, shape it into place, put it in front of the hair so we have that stray spikiness. Using a single vert, we will extrude it around to make the shape of an eyelash. Fill in the faces, subdivide, add solidify modifier, try to stretch it out. Realize that that's not really working, go back a little bit and do it the other way. That looks a little bit better. Apply the modifiers, and using sculpt mode, scoop things into place. Same thing with the bottom eyelid, single vert, extrude them out. Try to keep everything in quads, fill them in, solidify, subdivide. So I wasn't happy with the bangs, so I added in some more shapes. It's easier to move things around when they're not part of one giant piece of geometry. So I used a subdiv cube, kind of molded it in front of the bangs, and I did the same thing for the other side. And later on, we'll just remesh all this together and combine it. And now moving on to the hands, we'll work on just one finger, kind of make it, use the scrape tool to kind of make it blocky. I started putting a fingernail on here before I realized that she's wearing gloves, so we can just smooth all that back out. Put in some knuckles, do the same thing for the thumb, make it all blocky. Instead of doing this individually for each finger, I just copied the index finger and then deleted the old finger. Join the entire hand together and remesh it. Smooth out all the transitions, carving out valleys for the knuckles, and plumping up the hills for the knuckles. Shrink the fingers down just a little bit, fingers are a little too long. Using QuadRemesher, I reduce the quad count of the body only. Since Alyssa wears a dress, and at one point in the pose during the turnaround, you'll probably see up her dress, we're going to make her some underwear. So select all of the vertices where her underwear would be, and duplicate them. Separate that duplication from the mesh, add a solidify, and subdivision modifier. And we have underwear. We'll do the same thing to make the corset, and the top of her shirt. Her shirt has these puffy sleeves on them, so we'll select those edge loops and scale them up. Stretch out her sleeves. Select the bottom edge loop and scale it out to kind of make a tucked look. For her collar, take a plane and wrap it around her neck. Take the top loop and extrude it out and fold it down. Add a loop down the center and puff that out and tweak it into place with proportional editing. For her tie, add a cube, divide it a few times and add a bevel. Grab the middle loops and pull the middle out. Pull the corners out. Add another subdiv cube, shape it into the shape of her tie, and in side view you can curve it around her boobs. For her hairband, add a circle, extrude it out, and place it on her head. Cut it in half, add a slight bevel. For the ears we use a plane, and we extrude it out to the shape that we need. Add a subdivision modifier to smooth it out. Place it on the band and curve it. Add a solidify modifier to give it some thickness. And a mirror modifier. To make her boots, we'll start off by pushing her toes down into more of a tippy toe, and then select all the verts below her knees, duplicate them, and then select the spots on the bottom of her heels and extrude them downwards. Scaling them down as we go and pushing them forward, and we have her boots. We'll add some colors just to break things up to make it a little bit easier to see what we're doing. Take the bottom of the corset and extrude downwards and scale it up. Use scale Z0 to align the vertices flat. Then use loop tool circle to make the bottom of the dress perfectly circular. Select every third or fourth vert and scale them in and up. Add a loop cut to poof out her dress and then bevel it to smooth the transitions. Let's separate the corset from the dress. We'll extrude the bottom piece of the corset downwards and pull the middle part of it up to create that V shape in the middle. Do a little bit more tweaking on the dress to try to make the folds a little bit more noticeable. For the poofy part that's underneath her dress that I'm not sure what it's called, we'll take the bottom few verts of the actual dress, duplicate them, scale them down, and then pull them down. We'll grab a few verts and pull them in, pull the bottom frills down, and then grab the inside of the frills and pull them further down, and pull the top verts up. For the detail on the tie and the ears, we'll just take a single vert and extrude it around to make the V shape, solidify, subdivide. For the ears, we'll use a circle with proportional editing to get the shapes that we need, extrude the certain pieces out, and fill the rest of the faces in. Rotate it into place and snap it onto the ear and mirror it to the other ear. We'll add a bunch of buttons. Seems like buttons these days are how belts used to be back in the Final Fantasy days. Add the glove cuffs, just a cylinder. Then on the side of the cuff, we'll extrude out some planes to make the spot where they button together. 2 more cylinders for buttons on the collar. Using curves, we'll start placing in some strands of hair. Duplicate and reshape. We should be able to use 2 on one side and then 1 different one in the middle, and then just mirror the 2 on the sides. Next, we'll combine all the hair parts except for the long locks on the back. That way we can start making a smooth transition from the side bangs to the top bangs to the back of the head. Let's drop in a rigify armature and start putting bones into place. We're going to delete the face. Since we won't have any facial posing, we'll just do all that with sculpt mode. And move the bones into place, try to match them up with the model as best as you can. Make sure that the arms and the knees are slightly bent so they won't bend the wrong way when you go into pose mode. Now that everything's into place, generate the rig and parent the body to the rig. Go into pose mode and test things out. I decided to re-rig the model without the head because certain bones were starting to influence different pieces of her hair and her eyes, and I didn't feel like weight painting anything, and I can always just rotate and pose the head later on. As for the body though, we can go ahead and start posing. She's in kind of a crouched position, sitting on top of her own hand. So first we'll work on getting the crouch down right. We'll get her left hand in the position that it needs to be in order to hold herself, and get her right hand to where she needs to be grabbing her finger from the portaled hand. Here I'm duplicating her left hand and then scaling it up really high in order for her to sit on. Now we can position the rest of her body to conform around the hand. A lot of little movements and tweaking will get her left heel back and behind her, and her right hand holding onto her index finger. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but my viewport is lagging a lot right now. And that's because I'm using like an 11-year-old PC that I built a long time ago on a really low budget. Certain things that didn't get weighted right didn't really pose correctly, so I have to separate them and then move them into place manually. Well, we got the pose close, so we can start moving the head down and getting it into place. Now with the multi-res modifier on the giant hand, we can start flattening out a lot of the planes and adding detail to the large hand. Using elastic deform, we can kind of mold her palm to where her foot can cradle in it and it won't clip through her hand. Adding the seams on her gloves using draw sharp and the stabilize option on the brush. And since this hand is going through a portal, we can go ahead and delete it. Now since I did such a bad job at rigging, we have to manually put things into place now. So her blouse needs to be moved around in sculpt mode using the elastic deform to conform to where it tucks into the corset. We'll shape the tie to make it look like it has a little bit of movement. And we'll have to reshape the collar since it didn't move into place correctly. And now the dress. Using elastic deform, we'll try to inch it over to where we need it, underneath the corset and over top of the legs. And then we'll have to pull the back part of the dress pretty high to get it over top of the leg so it won't clip through. And for the puffy under part, we'll kind of rotate it and scale it around and then use elastic deform to move it into place as well. And for parts that just isn't working out right, I'll move the corset flaps up just a little bit. Now since this was such an extreme bend on the leg, it started to clip into itself, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem because most of it is hidden underneath the dress. And let's move the hair to make it look like it's swaying to the left a little bit. That way it's not so uniform. And now that the armature is already applied, we won't be able to move these fingers as easily, but we can still use the pose brush in sculpt mode. So using the pose brush, we'll try to move the fingers around to where it conforms around what she's holding onto a little easier. Make it look a little bit nicer. Let's move the pupils around so she's not looking straight forward, looking more of a downward angle. create a sphere and squish it down, and we're going to use these as portals. Add a giant cylinder for a giant button. And for the hair, we'll rotate it around. We'll get rid of the mirror modifier and try to move things into place to make it look less uniform. We'll move things around and make it look a little bit more flowy. Duplicate, rotate, add some variance to the hair. And then one last time for the final strand. Select all the hair pieces and remesh them so they all join together. Fill in some of the transitions with clay strips and smoothing. Once everything seems to be transitioning together well, we can smooth everything. And then between the strands of hair, we'll use the draw sharp brush and draw in the creases. Now with the final geometry on the hair, we'll add the multi-res modifier and start pulling out the planes on the bangs and smoothing out everything else. Now all that's left is doing the final touches, like putting in the folds and the creases and the extra lines and all the little detail junk things. While this is going on, you should go check out Billy at BillyDaDinosaur for the fan art that we used as the reference. And also go check out DeadSlug at _DeadSlug_. It's his character after all. I'm at Nisaki on Twitter. You can find the things that I'm currently modeling on there before they become a video. And if you'd like to give a suggestion on a character for me to do fan art of in 3D, leave it in a comment and I'll take a look at it. Thanks for watching, and if you like the video, please like the video. I'm working on getting a new PC so I can do more complicated things, but right now I'm just chugging along really slowly trying to piece together these characters, but hopefully within the next couple weeks I'll get a new PC and we can try harder things together. Thanks again, and here is the finished character. I will see you maybe next weekish. Alright, bye. Oh, and one last thing, some of you guys have been commenting that you would like to see an STL file of some of these models so you can 3D print them. I will look into that as soon as I can, and then whenever I get it figured out, I'll throw them up on Gumroad for free so you guys can download them and print them out whenever you want to. And I will let you know how that goes. Alright, bye. Last bye. Bye.
This track's about to get hot.